In mine, I was despised when my younger sister appeared. But one incident changed my life. In 2002, I, Daniel, then 18M, now 30M, had just graduated high school and was preparing to start at a prestigious engineering college. This new chapter in my life filled me with excitement and hope, even though my home life had always felt a bit hollow. My parents weren't cruel or dismissive, but their attention was always directed elsewhere, specifically toward my younger sister, Emma, then 14F, the golden child. From an early age, it was clear I had a natural aptitude for academics. But instead of earning praise, my achievements were met with a sense of inevitability. Success wasn't celebrated, it was expected. Mistakes, on the other hand, were met with harsh consequences. When I was 16, I once forgot to lock the front door, and my car privileges were taken away for a month. My accomplishments were acknowledged with the occasional, "good job," but never treated as anything remarkable. In contrast, Emma could do no wrong. Her athletic prowess, she was a USAG Level 8 gymnast by middle school, earned her endless praise. She wasn't exceptional academically, but that didn't matter. Family gatherings often became showcases for her latest routines. Even on my birthdays, she managed to be the center of attention, dictating the dinner plans or receiving praise for impromptu performances. I vividly remember the relief I felt when she quit gymnastics after 7th grade. Finally, there would be fewer competitions and less pressure to attend events that overshadowed my own life. Fast forward to the end of my freshman year of college. I came home for our annual family Memorial Day barbecue, a grand affair with extended family, friends, and even my dad's coworkers. I had just completed an incredible year, Dean's List both semesters, joining the shooting club where I discovered a natural talent, and building a strong circle of friends, including my girlfriend of 8 months, Olivia. Despite all this, the barbecue revolved around Emma. She had recently made All-State in the pole vault as a high school freshman, and that was all anyone talked about. I don't think my parents mentioned my college successes once. Only 2 people even asked me how school was going. I couldn't help but laugh internally. After all, why would anyone care about my ability to build an engine from scratch when Emma could jump over a bar with a stick? Things took a turn the following Thanksgiving. By then, I had been selected for an international internship in the UK for the upcoming summer. The majority of expenses were covered by scholarship, but there were some additional costs. My dad, much to my surprise, offered to cover them. He even praised me, something that rarely happened. I was deeply grateful, though this moment of recognition coincided with Emma finally facing serious consequences for her actions. She had been caught engaging in inappropriate behavior with a classmate in the school parking lot, and was subsequently found with marijuana in her backpack. The school suspended her for 10 days, and my parents took her car away for a month, a punishment I found ironic, considering my own past infractions. That Thanksgiving dinner was the first time I was the center of attention. Extended family members asked me about my internship, my academics, and my other achievements. Meanwhile, Emma sat quietly, grappling with the weight of genuine disappointment for the first time in her life. It was a bittersweet moment for me. I didn't relish her discomfort, but I was grateful for the rare chance to shine. I returned to school that Sunday night, feeling like things were finally turning in my favor. I stopped by Olivia's apartment to share the joy of the weekend with her. It was a perfect evening, one I now recognize as the last moment of true normalcy in my life. The next day I got an email from my family. For a moment, I sat with the letter in my hands, staring at my name scrawled in familiar handwriting. The words inside felt foreign, almost surreal. My parents, who had been so quick to cast me out, were now asking for forgiveness. They described their regret, their pain, and how they'd spent the past decade wrestling with the consequences of their actions. Most shocking of all was the admission that Emma, my sister, had finally confessed that it was all a lie. Her accusations, the ones that had ruined my life, were fabricated. I didn't know what to feel. For years, I'd fantasized about this moment, being vindicated, receiving an apology, and finally feeling that justice had been served. But now, faced with the reality of it, my emotions were tangled in ways I hadn't anticipated. Anger simmered just beneath the surface. How could they have believed her so easily? How could they have turned their backs on me without a second thought? Yet there was also sadness. A decade had been stolen from me, years I could never get back. The letter ended with an invitation. We hope you'll give us the chance to rebuild what we lost. Please let us see you again. I placed the letter on my desk, staring at it as if it might offer some clarity. Memories flooded my mind, not just of the betrayal, but of all the years since. The loneliness, the struggle to rebuild a life from the ashes of what had been. The faces of friends who had abandoned me, the dreams I'd given up on, the weight of moving forward without answers. Could I really forgive them? Could I face my sister, the person who had caused it all? For days, I avoided making a decision. I went to work, came home, and tried to drown out the noise in my mind. But the letter remained, an ever-present reminder of the choice I had to make. Eventually, I realized I couldn't decide on my own. I reached out to a therapist, a step I should have taken years ago. Over the next few sessions, I unpacked the layers of pain, anger, and confusion. The therapist didn't give me answers but helped me see that forgiveness wasn't about condoning what had happened. It was about freeing myself from the chains of the past. One evening, after weeks of reflection, I found myself writing a letter. It wasn't long, just a page, but it contained the most honest words I'd ever written. I told my parents how deeply they had hurt me, how their decision to believe Alicia without question had destroyed my life. I told them I didn't know if I could forgive them, but I was willing to try. I ended the letter by agreeing to meet, under the condition that Alicia wasn't present at first. I needed to face them before I could even think about facing her. I mailed the letter the next day, and then I waited. For days I stared at the 2 letters from Emma. I read them over and over, dissecting every word, every justification. The confession, if you could call it that, felt like a slap in the face. It wasn't rooted in genuine remorse but rather a desire to alleviate her own guilt. Even her admission came because of her husband, not because she'd found the strength or integrity to do the right thing herself. And then there was her life update, a bright, shining portrait of the life she'd built on the ruins of mine. A track scholarship, a supportive husband, a beautiful home, and now a daughter, the new apple of our parents' eyes. It was the kind of life I dreamed of having, the one I'd been on track to build before her lies tore everything apart. The worst part? She ended her letter with an invitation. She wanted me to come to Christmas, to meet her family, to sit down with the same people who had discarded me without a second thought. We can finally start to be a family again, she wrote. As if she hadn't been the one to shatter that family in the first place. I wasn't sure what to feel. Anger? Sadness? A twisted sense of justice that her husband had forced the truth out of her. The emotions swirled in me like a storm, each one pulling me in a different direction. Part of me wanted to confront her, to show up at Christmas and lay bare the truth she was still hiding from our parents. Another part wanted to burn the letters and never look back, to leave them all behind and continue my life without them. But the truth was, my life wasn't much of a life. I had spent the last decade barely surviving, haunted by the shadows of what could have been. My career had stalled, my relationships were non-existent, and I carried the weight of what felt like an irreparable loneliness. A week after receiving Emma's letter, I reached out to my therapist. Together, we explored what forgiveness might look like, not for her sake, but for mine. I didn't owe her anything, but perhaps forgiving her could free me from the chains she'd wrapped around me. And maybe, just maybe, it could open the door to healing the part of me that still longed for connection, even with the people who had hurt me most. The first step was to write my own letter, one I didn't plan to send. It was for me, a way to lay everything out, raw and unfiltered. I wrote about the pain she caused, the life she stole, and the years I spent clawing my way out of the darkness. I didn't sugarcoat my anger or my disappointment. But I also wrote about my desire to move forward, not for her, but for myself. Eventually, I decided to respond, not to Emma, but to my parents. I kept it short, agreeing to meet them on neutral ground, away from the house and certainly not at Christmas. As for Emma, I made it clear I wasn't ready to see her. Her confession may have brought the truth to light, but it didn't undo the damage she'd caused. When I sent the email, I felt a small but significant shift within me. For the first time in years, I had taken control of the narrative. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about me reclaiming the pieces of my life she tried to destroy. I decided that if I couldn't die, I'd have to find a way to live with the hand I'd been dealt. But living didn't come easy, not when trust felt impossible and relationships seemed like ticking time bombs waiting to blow. Every date, every conversation, every fleeting connection felt fragile, and the fear of abandonment always loomed. It was easier to end things before they could end me. I never let anyone get close enough to hurt me again. Except for Val. He was relentless in breaking through my walls, refusing to let me push him away like everyone else. In Iraq, I trusted him with my life, and somewhere along the way, I learned to trust him with parts of my soul, too. When we both got out, I moved to West Virginia to be near him and his wife, Jane. Their little family became the closest thing I had to stability. Being Uncle Daniel to their baby boy was the first time in years I felt like I belonged somewhere. But even with Val and his family, I kept parts of myself hidden. The anger, the bitterness, the haunting memories of a life I'd been robbed of, I carried those burdens alone. I built a life of quiet survival, working in a factory and living modestly in a one-bedroom apartment. My car, with over 300,000 miles, was a testament to my refusal to indulge in anything unnecessary. Despite a decent savings account from years in the service, I couldn't bring myself to do anything with it. Spending it felt like admitting I had something to celebrate. And then the letters came. The first, from my parents, was an apology wrapped in desperation. Alicia had finally confessed, they said. They wanted me to come home, to join them for Christmas, to rebuild the family. Their words felt hollow, like an attempt to ease their guilt rather than an earnest effort to make amends. Then came Emma's letter, a twisted cocktail of confession and self-justification. Her husband had pushed her to tell the truth, she admitted. She claimed she was sorry, but her words rang hollow. She wrote about her picture-perfect life, the track scholarship, the husband, the baby, and pleaded with me not to reveal the full extent of her lies to our parents. She wanted to preserve their image of her as a naive girl who made a mistake. The audacity of it all was staggering. She had stolen my life, left me to rot, and then built a dream existence on the ashes of my future. And now she wanted me to protect her? To join them for Christmas, and play along with the fantasy of a happy family? It was almost laughable. I talked to Val about it, pouring out all the rage, pain, and confusion that had been building inside me since the letters arrived. He listened, like he always does, without judgment or advice. When I was done, he said something that stuck with me. You don't owe them forgiveness, but you do owe yourself a chance to heal. Whatever decision you make it for you, not for them. Those words have been echoing in my head ever since. I've been going to therapy, trying to unpack the decade of grief, anger, and betrayal I've carried. My therapist tells me that closure isn't something anyone else can give me, it's something I have to create for myself. But how do you create closure when the people who broke you are still asking for absolution? I keep coming back to one question: what do I want? Do I want to confront them, to finally say the things I've kept bottled up for years? Or would going to Iowa only reopen old wounds, giving them the power to hurt me all over again? Do I stay in the life I've built, small and safe, or do I take the risk of stepping back into the fire, hoping it might finally burn clean? I don't have the answers yet. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm starting to ask the right questions. It's 17 days until Christmas Eve. I have been invited to meet with my family for the first time in years. However, a profound tragedy has struck. My truest brother, Val, and his wife, Kim, have suffered a terrible loss. Their daughter, my honorary niece, Michelle, has passed away unexpectedly. The pain of her loss has been overwhelming, but it's also opened my eyes to the resilience and values of those around me. Val and Kim are not your average people. They live a sustainable lifestyle, off the grid, powered by propane and solar energy. They use their own well for water and recycle everything they possibly can, ensuring minimal waste. Their way of life is a testament to living in harmony with the environment. They worked hard to give Michelle a life rooted in love, care, and sustainability, balancing their unique lifestyle with modern health practices like vaccinations and regular checkups. Today, we honored Michelle by incorporating her family's values into her farewell. Early this morning, Val and I constructed a tiny casket from reclaimed wood, materials salvaged and repurposed with care and love. This wasn't just a practical act but a deeply symbolic one, reflecting their commitment to sustainability even in the face of profound grief. Together, we also prepared her resting place on Val's family land, choosing a spot under the shade of a large oak tree that Michelle loved. Tomorrow, with his father's help, we will hold a private funeral. Only the four of us will be there to say goodbye. The simplicity and intimacy of the ceremony brought a moment of clarity for me. Val and Kim's strength, even amidst their sorrow, has inspired me. I've decided to accept my family's invitation and spend Christmas with them. It feels like the right thing to do, not just for myself but for the sake of reconciliation and connection, a chance to close old chapters and start anew. 2 days before my trip to Iowa, I made preparations with a heavy yet determined heart. I booked a decent hotel, opting for comfort to steady myself for the emotional journey ahead. I rented a car, knowing my old vehicle wasn't fit for the drive. I'll arrive on December 23rd to settle in and prepare to meet my family at their new home the next evening. Social media has been a bittersweet window into the last 10 years of their lives, years I've missed. I've seen their milestones, their joy, and their evolution. It's humbling and a little painful but also exciting to reconnect. Val and Kim have continued to support me in every way they can. Their resilience and generosity, even amidst their grief, have been remarkable. Val has spoken of recycling not just as a physical act but as a metaphor for renewal. "We recycle because we believe everything deserves another chance," he said. "That goes for materials, relationships, and ourselves." That perspective has reshaped how I view this trip. It's not just a reunion, it's a chance to recycle parts of myself that I thought were lost. It's about mending relationships and finding a way forward while carrying the lessons and love from Val, Kim, and the memory of Michelle. This journey will be emotional and challenging, but I believe I'm ready for it, thanks to the unwavering support of my real family, both old and new. I arrived at my parents' home about 30 minutes later than they'd asked me to. I wanted to avoid the flurry of arrivals and settle into the gathering with minimal attention. Christmas Eve wasn't a huge affair, just close family, my 2 grandmas, my grandpa, my aunt and uncle, their son and his wife, my parents, my sister Emma, her husband Billy, and their daughter Ivy. Billy and Ivy had been the only ones who hadn't distanced themselves from me. The rest of the family had created a polite but noticeable distance over the past months. I greeted them with warm, cordial hugs, though my heart was weighed down with a sense of purpose. In my hands were a few carefully chosen gifts. They weren't extravagant, but they carried a message. I placed the 2 largest ones under the tree, ensuring they took center stage, their presence impossible to ignore. Smaller packages were tucked away in other rooms, gifts meant to leave a quieter impression. These weren't just presents, they were my way of starting a conversation that needed to happen. The atmosphere was warm and cheerful. I joined in the small talk, admired the holiday decorations, and caught up on family news. The air smelled of pine and cinnamon, with the faint, comforting sound of Christmas music playing in the background. But the weight of my intentions never left me. When the announcement came that we'd be opening presents soon, I decided it was time. I asked Emma if we could step outside for a moment. She looked surprised but nodded, holding Ivy close to her chest. She asked if carrying the baby still counted as private, and I assured her it did. The cold night air greeted us as we stepped onto the porch. The stars twinkled above, a serene contrast to the tension I felt building inside. Before I could say anything, Emma began to apologize. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "Thank you for not revealing everything. Thank you for protecting Ivy from all of this." Her words hung in the air, but I held up a hand to pause her. "Wait," I said gently. "I have something for you." I returned to my car and retrieved a small package. Handing it to her, I said, "This is for you. Open it." She looked at me with a mix of confusion and curiosity as she unwrapped it. Inside was a simple photo album. Each page contained a picture of our family, from Christmases past, birthdays, summer barbecues, and candid moments. Beneath each photo, I'd written a short memory or message. Emma flipped through it, her eyes welling with tears. "Why are you giving me this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because we can't keep living in the past," I replied. "We've all made mistakes, Alicia. But we're family. This album is a reminder of what we've shared, what we can still have if we're willing to work for it." She hugged the album close and nodded, unable to speak. I reached out and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go back inside. There's more to do tonight." Back in the house, the mood had shifted. The presents were opened, and everyone was touched by the gifts I'd chosen: a handwritten letter for my parents, a vintage recipe book for my grandmother, and personalized ornaments for the rest of the family. Each gift carried a message of reconciliation and hope. When Emma opened the second large package under the tree, she gasped. Inside was a scrapbook filled with Ivy's milestones, her first smile, her first steps, her artwork. It was a gift for her and Billy, a reminder of the joy their daughter brought to the family. As the night wound down, I stood and addressed the room. "This year has been hard," I began, my voice steady. "We've all been through things that tested us. But standing here tonight, seeing all of you together, I realize what matters most. It's not the mistakes we've made or the grudges we've held. It's the love that's always been there, even when we forgot how to show it." There were tears and hugs, but more importantly, there was a sense of renewal. This Christmas wasn't just a holiday, it was a turning point for our family. As I left that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt like a road worth traveling. I knew time was of the essence. The sounds of sirens grew louder, mixing with the muffled shouts from inside the house. Taking a deep breath, I walked to my car, carefully placing Ivy in the box I had set up in the front seat. Not the safest option, but I knew the destination was close. Driving cautiously, I made the short 6-minute journey to the meeting point, an abandoned lot behind the old warehouse we had scoped out weeks before. Val and Kim were already there, waiting under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Their faces lit up when they saw me. I stepped out, cradling little Michelle in my arms as I approached them. "It's done," I said softly. Kim's eyes welled up as she took Ivy from me, holding her close. She kissed my cheek, a gesture of gratitude that spoke volumes. Val pulled me into a strong embrace, his voice steady as he said, "Brother, you did it." I lingered for a moment, watching as Kim and Val fussed over Ivy. They looked like the family I had always dreamed of having. For the first time, I felt a sense of peace. Turning back to my car, I made the trip home, the same calm precision guiding my movements. When I arrived, the house was a chaos of flashing lights and frantic activity. Paramedics were tending to Emma, who was hysterical, her screams cutting through the night. I parked 2 blocks away, removed my clothes down to my compression shorts, and approached the scene with my hands raised above my head. I surrendered myself without resistance, knowing the plan had succeeded. The rest is history. I was sentenced to life without parole. For years I grappled with guilt, particularly for Billy. He had been a good man, caught in a marriage that destroyed him. But over time, the purpose of my actions became clearer, especially when I received a letter from Val. 10 years had passed, our agreed period of no contact. The letter, rerouted through multiple acquaintances to avoid detection, contained just 3 words in Val's familiar handwriting. "All is well." I smiled when I read it. They never found Ivy. They never found Val or Kim. Together, they became the family I could never have, giving Ivy the love and safety she deserved. Knowing this gave me a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. Now, more than a decade later, I finally get to share my side of the story. When Netflix approached me with an offer to document everything, the prison gave me access to post this update. To my surprise, my old login still worked. For those who followed my story from the start, this update is for you. The Netflix series will be a 4-part limited documentary. Unlike other shows that speculated about me, this one includes my voice and, for the first time, offers updates on Alicia. According to the producers, she never remarried and never stopped searching for Ivy. Knowing she's lived with that loss, mirroring the pain she caused me, brings a bittersweet sense of relief. This is closure, final and absolute. To everyone who supported me, offered advice, or simply followed along, thank you. This story isn't just mine. It's ours, and now, the world will see it through our eyes.